marijuana leads to increased anxiety. It can lead to panic attacks. It can lead to depression, suicide attempts. It can lead to schizophrenia and other psychoses.
Right. So what inspired you to write this book and tackle such a controversial topic in the first place?
And when someone tries to tell you, oh, it's natural, that means it's safe. Well, think about arsenic and lead and mercury and hydrogen sulfide and radon, asbestos, and plants like oleander and rosary pea, castor bean, white snake root, all of those things, hemlock. They're all poisonous. They're even deadly. They're natural, but they can be deadly.
And Dr. Raymond, for those struggling with addiction or health complications from marijuana, what steps would you recommend for recovery and better health? So, folks, you have tuned into TGV and hearty welcome to the Guiding Voice podcast series, the world's only quadrilingual podcast at this moment of recording. And we are trying to embark into multiple languages as we speak. And here we embark on transformative conversations for a better future. And we want to simplify and amplify your journey to success. I'm your host, Naveen Samala, dedicated to making the world a better place by bringing you wisdom through valuable discussions with experts designed to simplify and amplify your success. And thank you so much for tuning in. So, folks, we are joined by Dr. Raymond Wiggins. He is the author of the book, Weeding Out the Myths About Marijuana. He is a licensed physician who has been on the front lines of healthcare for almost 3 decades, and he has served in many leadership roles and personally performed general anesthetics on over 27,000 patients. And today, we are going to have an interesting conversation on the topic, Weeding Out the Myths, the real risks of marijuana with Dr. Raymond Wiggins. But before we get started, here's an exciting twist as always. Let us tickle his brain first. So, Dr. Raymond, get ready for a rapid fire round of random words. I'll mention a few and I would love to hear the first thing that comes to your mind in response without thinking much. If you're ready, let's get started.
Good.
Hello, I'm Steve Ahern, one of the judges of the Asia Podcast Awards. I'm interrupting this episode to let you know that you're listening to an award-winning podcast. This podcast won its category in the 2024 Podcast Awards, so you know you're listening to quality. Enjoy your listening experience, and congratulations to the team who created this award-winning podcast for you.
All right, so here comes the first word, curiosity.
Invention.
Invention.
Elon Musk.
Future.
Right.
Book.
Weeding Out the Myths About Marijuana.
Okay, resilience.
The Key to Life.
Addiction.
Marijuana.
Hope.
God.
Controversy.
Marijuana.
Science.
Incredible.
Universe.
Expanding.
Leadership.
Integrity.
Role model.
Dad.
And the last one is success.
Heaven.
All right. So thank you so much for participating in the first rapid fire round. And there is one more rapid fire round towards the end of the episode. So stay tuned. And Dr. Raymond, hearty welcome to the Guiding Voice podcast series. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you, Naveen? I'm really honored to be here.
I'm doing very well. Yeah. Pleasure is mine and equally honored to have you on the show. And let's begin. And first we'll go with your guiding voice. Share with us who is your guiding voice.
Well, first I would say, God, that still small voice within me that tells me I'm either doing the right thing or I'm not. And that can be through books. It can be through people. My parents have been a great guiding voice in my life. My dad's no longer with us, but there's no way I'd be here today if not for both of my parents. And they taught me so much through not only words, but actually through their actions as well. They're great examples.
Oh, great to hear that. And also, Dr. Raymond, talk to us about your success mantra, as in top 3 things that have contributed to your success so far.
Number one, I would say tenacity. My dad told me when I was young, have bulldog tenacity. Never give up, no matter what the circumstances. Also, hard work. hard work can help you overcome a multitude of failures. And I've had many, but tenacity and hard work have both helped me there. And then the last thing I would just say, blessings. Sometimes I don't understand, despite my flaws, how I've been really successful in life. And I attribute it just to undeserved blessing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. I think many a times we fail to acknowledge that, but I'm glad that you mentioned about it. Yeah, it is great to have those kind of blessings in life, and thank you for sharing that. And your book, Weeding Out the Myths About Marijuana, takes a strong stance on marijuana risks, right? So, what inspired you to write this book and tackle such a controversial topic in the first place?
Marijuana is very personal to me. I have 3 close relatives who all died very young. And I have absolutely no doubt that they would be here today if not for marijuana. They were all very heavy marijuana users.
Mm-hmm.
And one died of a sudden heart attack after smoking marijuana for about 30 years. And then also a close family member of mine, a really great young man, went to college and he got in with a group of guys who were smoking marijuana. And he thought, hey, these guys seem to be doing okay. Nobody seems to be having any problems. But after just the second time, he developed cannabis-induced psychosis and wound up in a psychiatric hospital and was never able to return to school. That's the personal side. And then there's the professional side where I see anxiety in my patients who smoke marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, I see that it takes about 3 times more propofol to keep these patients sedated versus other patients. And that's from a big study. It's actually 3.2 times according to that study.
Wow.
And then the last one is it takes about 60% more pain medicine to keep our patients comfortable after surgery if they smoke marijuana. And people think that marijuana leads to decreased pain, but it actually increases pain when you come down from it. It's called hyperalgesia. So that's how I became interested. I saw the effects in my patients, my family, my friends, and so I began investigating, and what I found really shocked me.
Yeah, scary facts indeed. And sorry to hear about the loss of your dear ones. And Raymond, many believe this marijuana is relatively harmless, right? But how does your research challenge that notion, especially in terms of heart and mental health risks?
Naveen, you picked two great ones there because those are actually the two that surprised me the most when I began studying about this subject. I didn't realize until I started investigating the really significant cardiovascular and mental health effects. I didn't realize the risks were so high. And marijuana leads to increased blood pressure, heart rate, inflammation in the bloodstream. And all of these things, along with many others, lead to a greatly increased risk of damage to the heart, as I saw with my cousin. And then Harvard Health published a study several years ago that showed that marijuana leads to a 5 times risk of a heart attack for an hour after smoking. And there's a recent Canadian study that shows that there's a 63% increase in heart attacks for 30 days after using marijuana. Wow. And then talking about the mental health effects, marijuana leads to increased anxiety. It can lead to panic attacks. It can lead to depression, suicide attempts. It can lead to schizophrenia and other psychoses. And some of these effects are not just short term, but they can actually be long term and even permanent, especially in those who have undeveloped brains, those who are under the age of 25. And there's actually a British study that shows until the age of 40. So these are 2 huge effects of marijuana.
Okay, so you mentioned about anxiety, schizophrenia, suicide attempts, right? So these are the risks from the mental health perspective. So why do you think these are overlooked in public discussions? Why there is no open talk?
Yeah, people don't understand that today's marijuana is really not like it was in the past. Today's marijuana, almost all of it is what's called high potency. If you go back to 1969 to Woodstock, marijuana was 1 to 2% THC. It had a pretty low risk then. What they would say the good stuff was about 3%. Well, today that's 22%, and anything over 10% carries a really great increased risk of addiction. It carries increased risk of physical effects as well. And people don't understand that. And then the other thing is big marijuana is winning the cultural battle. They're bankrolling politicians. They're bankrolling referendums. Here in the U.S., they're spending just countless dollars. And in the recent Florida referendum to legalize marijuana for recreational use, there was a Canadian company that put in over $100 million into that referendum through pro marijuana advertising. Thankfully, that failed. But there's the reasons that we overlook it are really those two main reasons, and there are some others as well.
Okay, got it. And also, can you shed some light on the hidden social and economic costs of marijuana use that most people are not aware of?
Yeah, most people think that there's really not any big risk to marijuana. They don't think about the economic and the societal cost of marijuana. But marijuana, a lot of times they'll tout the tax revenue that comes in if it's legalized. Well, for every dollar that comes in through tax revenue, there's $4.50 spent on healthcare and other things. So you're actually draining your economy. You're not really helping it, and only a very small portion of budgets comes from that. Usually, less than 1% will come from marijuana tax revenue. And one of the selling points of legalized marijuana is that it will reduce crime, but unfortunately, studies show that just the opposite is true. There's more violent crime, there's more DUIs, and again, that's one of the biggest misconceptions. And if you're talking about driving, marijuana really decreases your ability. It impairs your ability to drive. It impairs your decision-making ability. It slows your reaction time. It impairs many of the skills that you need to drive safely, and that leads to devastating effects. AAA Newsroom estimated that 15 million drivers in the U.S. alone get behind the wheel within an hour after smoking marijuana each month.
Yeah.
And that leads to significant consequences. 22% of all fatal auto accidents are related to marijuana. And in the U.S., that was 9,400 cannabis-related fatal accidents in 2022.
Yeah, these numbers are again something really need to be worried. We need to be worried about, right? And I have seen in the US, like people smoking in public, right, when they are driving. And I think it is very dangerous, not only to them, but also the other person as well. Anything can happen, right? And this is really risky. And also, many young people view marijuana as harmless or even beneficial, right? So, what would you say to parents or educators trying to convey the real risks of early marijuana use?
Yeah, although public opinion may not be on your side all the time, science is definitely on your side. And yes, you can find studies that will contradict what I'm saying, but the preponderance of the evidence, and even beyond any reasonable doubt, the evidence is on your side. It's not something that you want in your body. And so learn as much as you can about it. There are many great resources out there, great books. And I have links to a lot of those on my website. There's a lot of free resources there that you can get. And one of the facts about why marijuana is not safe is a lot of times people will say, "Hey, it's natural." Well, they'll try to tell you that it's natural, but really it's not. How did marijuana go from 1% or 2% THC to 22%? That didn't happen naturally. They didn't just put it in the field and selectively breed it. And when someone tries to tell you, "Oh, it's natural," that means it's safe. Well, think about arsenic and lead and mercury and hydrogen sulfide and radon, asbestos, and plants like oleander and rosary pea, castor bean, white snake root. All of those things, hemlock. They're all poisonous. They're even deadly. They're natural, but they can be deadly. And marijuana is the same way. Even if you want to go back to the 1 to 2%, it can still be deadly. And it's not necessarily safe just because we say that it's natural. So keep those things in mind.
This is quite insightful, and thank you for sharing that. And also, can you share your thoughts on CBD and Delta 8 THC? And are they as safe as they are marketed to be?
They're not. CBD it is safer than THC. I will definitely say that, and it's safer than Delta 8 as well.
Mm-hmm.
But many people believe that it's going to treat and prevent and cure a lot of diseases like pain and anxiety, depression, mental health illnesses, etc. It's touted to do a lot of things. But the Mayo Clinic, one of the biggest hospitals here in the U.S., one of the most renowned, says that CBD doesn't do clinically anything that it's claimed to do, but it has several side effects. It causes dry mouth and GI side effects. It can cause sleep disturbances. At the same time, it can cause drowsiness. So if people are driving using CBD, that could actually be dangerous. And it can also interact with a lot of other drugs and lead to bleeding, etc. So it's not as safe as what it's supposed to be. Again, although I would say it's safer than THC. It can cause liver harm. It can cause male reproductive harm as well.
Mm-hmm.
Regarding Delta 8, it's known as marijuana light. It's less potent than Delta 9 THC, which is what we talk about most of the time when we're talking about THC. But Delta 8 is not as abundant in the cannabis plant. So how it's made generally is they convert CBD to Delta 8 through using chemicals that are often household chemicals. And these chemicals are not safe when you mix them. And in many jurisdictions, Delta 8 is not legal once it's gone through that transformation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also difficult to remove the Delta 9 from the Delta 8. So there's often more Delta 9 in there. So that may also mean that it's illegal. Many reasons here that we can say that Delta 8 is both not safe and it can be a legal minefield as well. And actually, there's studies that show that even though it's less potent, a lot of people think, oh, that means it's safer. Well, really, actually, studies bear out that Delta 8 it can be riskier than Delta 9.
Mm-hmm. All right. Great information. I think you have done significant research in this subject, and all your responses speak it all. And my next question is around this medical marijuana, right? So what are some of the biggest misconception around that? And is it hype or does it offer real hope?
Many misconceptions about medical marijuana. And one is that marijuana has been FDA approved for medical use. It hasn't been. There are 2 drugs that are made from concentrated CBD that are approved for extremely rare types of epilepsy. And there are 2 more drugs that are synthetic and similar to THC, but they're not THC. They're used for nausea and appetite stimulation. Again, these aren't THC, and they're not. The FDA has not approved smoking marijuana or using marijuana in any way because it has a high propensity for addiction and it has no recognized medical use. And marijuana is touted many times as beneficial for many diseases, but objective studies just don't show this. There are some studies that show a slight decrease in a type of pain called neuropathic pain, but that's only a 2% decrease. And there's a lot of better drugs out there for that. And also for sleep and anxiety, there are some studies that show that it helps there, but those studies, according to the FDA, are very flawed and small. And when it comes down to it, they really don't help. And for sleep, for instance, marijuana actually disrupts the sleep architecture and doesn't allow you to go into REM sleep. Although it may help to go to sleep at first, within 2 months, even that effect is gone. So now you're hooked on it. You need it to sleep, yet you don't get good rest.
Mm-hmm. Got it. And yeah, please continue.
Also, for one thing that people use it for is for nausea and cancer, and I want to bring that up because it can actually reduce your immune response. And by reducing that immune response, you're actually decreasing your chance of survival in many cases. So it's not something that I could recommend for that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, wonderful. I think this is real insightful conversation and it has been amazing so far. And it's time for us to add some spice and some fun element to the episode. So if you're ready, we'll kick off the second rapid fire round.
Sounds good.
Okay, comes my first bullet. If you could have one gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, what would it say?
It would be in Times Square for sure because that's such an iconic billboard, and it would just say, "Hey, God loves you, and I love you."
Hmm. Okay. Can you describe yourself in just one word?
Thankful.
And what is one thing people would be surprised to learn about you?
Usually put it in 16 to 18, even sometimes 20-hour days because I work full time, and then also I do this.
Mhm, mhm. And what is the best piece of advice you have ever received?
Card and do very well in school, and you can do anything you want to do.
Mm. Yeah, wonderful. And one biggest misconception about health that you have come across?
Marijuana is safe.
Mm. Okay, what is your favorite motivational quote?
Calm sea never made a skillful sailor.
Wow. And here comes the last one from the second rapid fire round. What is one electronic gadget or a fantasy gadget that you'd like to see or invent yourself?
I need a teleporter. Time is the most valuable commodity we have, and that would save so much time.
Yeah, most of our guests are wishing for that, and I think we have to manifest for teleporting device to come active to get launched. Wonderful. And let's flip back to that mainstream after that amazing second rapid fire round. So, Dr. Raymond, for those struggling with addiction or health complications from marijuana, what steps would you recommend for recovery and better health?
First is don't give up. You can overcome addiction, and I've seen it countless times. And second, I would say don't try to do this alone. That's a huge one. People who try to do this on their own almost always fail. Find people that can help you. It can be family members, friends. It can be spiritual leaders, teachers, counselors, drug dependency programs. And usually it's a combination of these. And
Hmm.
by the way, people uh, who are currently addicted or recently addicted are not the ones that need to be helping you because you'll both fail if you try to do it that way. Third, I would say the people that I've known that have overcome drugs have relied on a higher power. It's what's taught in 12-step programs. Those who neglect the spiritual aspect of their lives are usually the ones that fail. So I talk extensively about that in the expanded edition of my book.
Hmm. Okay. Got it. And such a powerful set of tips. And I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, Dr. Raymond. And how is your experience being hosted on TGV, the guiding voice?
This has been awesome. You've been an absolutely amazing host, and I thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, most welcome and looking forward to invite you again in the future. And I wish you all the best in everything that you do and more power to you. And most importantly, keep up the great work in terms of spreading awareness around the consequences of this marijuana. So I hope you contribute to building this world a better place. Wonderful.
Thank you so much, and you're doing the same. You're making this world a better place, Naveen. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Raymond. And friends, that was our amazing episode with Dr. Raymond Wiggins. And before we jump into the fun trivia section, we have a quick request in case if you have enjoyed the conversation and found it useful, please share with at least three of your friends or colleagues who would also like TGV, the guiding voice. So spread the knowledge and help others grow just like you have been growing. Now it's time for us to cruise into the trivia segment. There are two interesting facts about countries where marijuana is grown extensively. The first is about Afghanistan, a major producer of hashish. Afghanistan is one of the largest producers of cannabis resin or hashish in the world. While it is primarily known for opium production, cannabis cultivation is also widespread, especially in the northern regions. And the country's rugged terrain provides ideal conditions for large scale cultivation. Despite efforts to curb production, Afghanistan remains a global leader in hashish exports. Second is Paraguay, which is a cannabis export powerhouse. Paraguay is one of the largest producers of illegal marijuana in South America, responsible for an estimated 60% of the region's supply. And most of the cannabis cultivated in Paraguay is smuggled to neighboring countries like Brazil, and Argentina. And interestingly, while cannabis remain illegal in Paraguay, its widespread cultivation persists in rural areas where economic opportunities are limited and law enforcement struggles to control it. So that's it from my side from the trivia perspective, folks. Today, my question is not around the countries who are growing more of these marijuana and other substances, but my question is around, have you come across any individual who had overcome this addiction of marijuana? Then do let me know, because I would love to know more about how people are able to overcome those addictions. And in case if you're watching this episode on YouTube, you can comment there. Or if you found this episode on audio platforms or some social media platforms, you can comment there as well. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in and also for being part of our awesome TGV family. So folks, until next time, take care and stay inspired. And remember, the best is yet to come. So goodbye for now. See you all in the next episode with another amazing guest. Take care. Love you all. Bye-bye.